Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
Hello and welcome to the Forbes India One CEO Club in partnership with Google Cloud, a unique series that recognizes and celebrates India's finest CEOs. My guest today, Virendra Gupta, bet early on India's lingual diversity. In 2014, he created a mobile app called Daily Hunt. This has evolved into a platform for publishers of videos, news, and other content in 14 languages. In 2018, Virendra brought on board Umang Bedi from Facebook India to become the co-founder and president of Daily Hunt. To find out how Daily Hunt is dealing in a very competitive environment using technology, I have the two leaders with me. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Virendra, I want to start with you. More than 56% of the user base in India is outside our traditional markets, in large, outside the large cities. How did you have to kind of create Daily Hunt to cater to this kind of an audience?
So actually, I think the point you made is so true that India doesn't reside in the large cities. There are two aspects of India. One is that India doesn't reside in large cities. Second thing is India doesn't speak English. 70% of Indian population speaks in non-English language. And that exactly is what our product market fit. And that's what NewsHunt, which now is Daily Hunt, was built for. Our core thesis is that India consumes content in vernacular languages, which is non-English languages, and they reside in nook and corner of the country. We built an app which was catering to that segment, which was fully ignored at that point of time. And over a period of time, today we have 250 million monthly active users, spending about 24 minutes a day on our platform.
Umang, it's 2 years since you joined Daily Hunt, a very highly competitive environment. What are the challenges for a company that has that order of competition in India?
So I think the first thing that I'd say is that just the partnership with Viru, right, like a real brother in arms, has been the foundation for us to make really big, bold pivots in our journey. The first pivot that we made was really redefine the mission of the company, where we said we want to be the largest digital media platform and an AI-driven content discovery environment that's helping consumers discover, consume, and socialize with content that's not just informational, which is news, but engaging and entertaining, right? Which is really multi-genre content. The second thing that we really set out to do was explode content supply. And the third was really making it discoverable and consumable by that audience by a big, large investment into AI and tech and a front end in terms of the user experience.
There is a bit of seamlessness as far as the digital experience is concerned. How do you ensure customer stickiness? If both of you could take this question.
Basically, eventually the customer stickiness comes from, at the end of it, customer doesn't care about what tech is behind what product. The customer stickiness comes from that he's able to get a content which he relates to and which he likes. Now, to do that across the depth and width of the country and across 14 languages, we went and explored the content supply. So we went from about 2,000 content creators to about 50,000 content creators on our platform. Those 50,000 content creators gave us content from nook and corner of the country. Multi-genre of the content came on the platform, from news to local news to entertainment, to health, to women, to sports, and so on and so forth.
I think personalization is the ability to provide to the consumer what he or she is looking to see at that very instant of time. And that happens when you marry two variables. One, you have a very deep understanding of content, right? And so Viru alluded to us developing this machine learning and data science based backbone on which today we ingest millions of pieces of content every day. And we today have developed the largest machine learning, which has moved to deep learning, repository of the content.
Okay. Virendra, what kind of technology elements have made this possible? You talked about AI and ML, but how long did it take for Daily Hunt to nuance this and make it into a strong platform?
So I think if you ask, one of the biggest competitive advantage which Daily Hunt has above other platforms, both global and India, is their tech stack. And this tech stack includes two things. One is the engineering stack, another is the data science stack. Now, today, the amount of our systems have been architected to run at huge scale and to capture user signals in real time. We have thousands of servers, tens of thousands of CPUs, petabytes of RAM, and so on and so forth, which is enabling our IT infrastructure to deliver a feed in the real time.
How does the platform behave during big incidents, like say if there's a national election happening or a World Cup match or something like that?
Every single parameter of the system gets pressure tested under a stress scenario, right? And those stresses are great for the business because one, as Viru said, the entire tech backend that has been architected is in-house. Every single line of code is in-house. We run our own private cloud. So it's a virtuous cycle.
Okay.
And what these peaks do, they create new norms. After every peak, the goal is after a couple of months, the system actually stabilizes to that peak till we hit the next peak after that, right?
True.
So that's the way we think about the business.
Virendra, are there any complications because there are multiple languages? Also networks in different parts of the country. So what kind of nuances come into play because of that?
Actually, that's a good question, and this complexity is what creates differentiation of our business versus somebody else who's doing this. One is that each language has its own script. So rendering that font on a mobile phone itself was a big thing, and we solved that pretty early in the game. Second thing is each language has its own nuances in terms of its correlation of multiple words. So, typically when people start doing data science and machine learning, they'll break a sentence into separate words and try to correlate it. But if you don't understand the context of each word, you can't understand the essence or the emotion of a content. And there's a huge amount of complexity over there, which we have solved through supervised and unsupervised data learning.
We talked about how competitive this whole segment is. There's also the media and entertainment sector, but if you zero in on the technology talent available for this, it gets even more competitive because the big tech companies are very aggressive in India. What kind of challenges has this put on Daily Hunt?
I think one, it's a challenge. The other is it's a huge opportunity. If you really want to have impact, if you want to drive a larger cause of serving Bharat, right, then this is the right place for you. If you're a problem solver, it's the right place for you.
Virendra, Umang, many thanks for sharing your insights from the Daily Hunt journey. That was Virendra Gupta and Umang Bedi telling us about the role of technology in digital advertising. Time for a short break, but do join me on the other side as I meet another CEO scripting a digital future for his company. Hello and welcome to the Forbes India One CEO Club in partnership with Google Cloud, a unique series that recognizes and celebrates India's finest CEOs. My guest today heads a young hyperlocal delivery company called Dunzo Digital. Mobile users love the app, but the real difference that Dunzo is making is for local commerce and shopkeepers in solving last mile reach. What is the method behind this daily madness? To find out, I have with me co-founder and CEO of Dunzo Digital, Kabir Biswas. Kabir, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Kabir, seems like a long time ago, but there was a time when you were working at Airtel, right? And you had a very interesting role there. Do you remember what that was about?
So I did sales for a bit, and then I went ahead and started building product around social and location-based services and networking. Very early actually. This is, I think the iPhone had just launched, and honestly telecom operators wanted to do a lot of stuff that the web ended up doing finally because they controlled access. And honestly, they had really, really big plans.
When you think of groceries or food tech in 2015, there were at least 4 or 5 very solid, well-backed ventures. So what were the possibilities for a player like Dunzo to even start from there? Can you just go back to that and describe what made you get into a space that everyone was scared to be in 2015?
So I think so honestly, it's really 16 is when we must have really taken off. 15 was us largely going around and asking people what they wanted to get done, and they used to send stuff on WhatsApp and I used to run it down. I think one thing that's been true about us and which we try and keep true even today is we're just building for what our users want. We're not building for, food delivery is happening out there in the world, or grocery delivery is happening out there in the world, or something is growing out there in the world and we should build for that user experience. We're just building for what our consumers want.
So the mission of the company was, how do I take something from point A to point B at less than $50, which is about 36 rupees? How does the math work out?
I think what we are building is we look like the postal service of an Indian city, which means you drop something at point A, it shows shows up at point B at some particular time or at some particular cost. Right? It's like any other courier service that you could get. What you transport on that doesn't matter. It matters that you get it done predictably from point A to point B at a particular cost that's been offered to the consumer. And I think the maths insight was really what we built around.
Okay.
Saying, oh, okay, cool, this makes sense. Because I don't think consumers want one thing, right? You at the end of the day are trying to make cities a lot more efficient. And making cities a lot more efficient means that you are going ahead and moving everything from point A to point B. And so no, we just kept that insight and kept.
But even companies like Amazon and Flipkart have tried this same thing with the same kind of tech stack available and the resources available, the thinking available, and they crack logistics to some extent. So what's the moat for a Dunzo to be able to?
So I think the ultra fast delivery layer, I don't think they have really been able to crack as yet. We on an average today, our average delivery times are at like 24 minutes.
Okay.
So you ask for something and it shows up in 24 minutes time. I've been told globally that's pretty much as good as it gets. Because after a point now physics tends to play out. He'll go reach that place, he'll park the bike, and so all of those things, right?
Can you comment on the technology ecosystem that enabled the Dunzo to grow as fast as it has? Because there were many players who have tried the same thing from 2010-11, and somehow it seemed like a lot of other building blocks were not in place in the tech ecosystem. What has Dunzo benefited from?
So I was reading this Benedict Evans, year-end take on technology, right? Okay. And there's this quote from, and so his entire thesis is about as to how tech is now building on the shoulder of giants. And it's basically saying that a lot of fundamental layers on tech are already built out. Today with calling an API, I can go ahead and say what your location is and can figure out as to how somebody out there on the road can reach you in how long. Just imagine thinking about that like 7 years back. It would have been impossible to do in 2013, right? Because every person on the ground also required to have a smartphone. So you can basically rewire a lot of existing or Web 1.2 experiences today.
And how do you sensitize the delivery folk for these kind of rapid changes, because their product experience too keeps changing every few weeks? How do you, that is an offline kind of a problem, but you have to keep them on page with what you're doing in your tech stack, right?
Think about people and our supply partners exactly like consumers, and so we hold their experience also exactly as close to us as like consumers. It's simple, you can't build something that they won't understand, right? And changes are iterative in nature.
So speaking of traffic, how close is Dunzo in terms of using drones to solve these kind of customer problems?
So drones, I think, is no more a technology problem in the world, right? So for us to be able to actually, and think of drones as two problems, right? One is a drone is used to deliver to your house, or the drone is used to deliver to a location close to your house, after which the last leg is still done by a human being. The technology for both of them exists. It's just that we don't believe that the infrastructure for the first one exists. We don't believe that houses, etc., are at a place where they can go ahead and take drone deliveries and stuff like that. Like in this office, where will you take a drone delivery, right? So we believe that the second one, where the item gets delivered much closer to you, right, within like a 500 meter radius or a kilometer radius, and the last leg then can get run by a human being, is the tech that we will see first. So actually this is now a bit of a policy and a regulatory thing. And so we have actually seen great movement from the government. In the last 12 months time, I think we have been working very closely with them. And what we have gotten is so we are pretty much the only B2C brand in the country today which has been allowed to test drones and which are not line of sight. And so we are testing it this month and next month on the outskirts of Bangalore. This should hopefully allow us to go ahead and be able to present a paper to the government to say that, hey, we believe that this is what policy should look like. We believe that it should be hub to hub, which means if you want something from Koramangala, today it on an average takes about 40 minutes. With a drone, it should be here in about 12-13 minutes. Honestly, if you really want to be able to run a logistics business in a city, in an Indian city, you need to be able to find large legs of that can become autonomous.
Okay.
So yeah, we're building for it now.
Kabir, thanks for sharing your insights from the Dunzo journey.
Thank you so much for having us.
That was Kabir Biswas, co-founder and CEO of Dunzo Digital, talking to us about how logistics is being reimagined for India. Time for a short break, but do join me on the other side as I speak with another CEO scripting a digital future for his company. Hello and welcome to the Forbes India One CEO Club in partnership with Google Cloud, a unique series that recognizes and celebrates India's finest CEOs. We're at the Experience Center of Tata Elxsi, a highly profitable company that prides itself in creative engineering. It operates in industries like transportation, communication, and broadcasting, in areas like embedded product design and industrial design. To find out how, I have with me the CEO and Managing Director of Tata Elxsi, Mr. Manoj Raghavan. Manoj, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Manoj, in the areas of system integration and software development and services, the Tata Group already has TCS and Tata Technologies. What does Tata Elxsi do differently for its enterprise customers?
Yeah, we are a very niche product design services organization. The type of capabilities that we have is very different from what a very large organization like TCS or a very focused organization like Tata Technologies have, right? What is different in case of Tata Elxsi is the select focus on key verticals, and we span across the product design services, spectrum, right from engineering, right, all the way up to the UI, UX, and the product design itself. So we pride upon the fact that we have a set of creative folks and a set of hardcore engineering talent. And it's a unique combination of this that really brings value to our customer.
What technology changes help Tata Elxsi bring design and technology together?
We've essentially thrive on technology disruptions. Every industry or segment that we are in is undergoing through a number of technology transformation. We have to keep in really touch with what is happening, what are the latest things that are happening, and reskill ourselves, retool ourselves to really be relevant in the future.
Which are the industries that have contributed to Tata Elxsi's growth, say in the last 3 years? And how different is that from, say, a decade ago, the chief contributors to its growth?
Sure. A decade ago, we were more, structured along, technology areas. We were a technology-driven company. We still are a technology-driven company. Around 2010 and 2011, we really decided to restructure ourselves and focus on industry verticals. We still have these technologies, but we are driven by industry verticals. So we really focused on, say, the automotive industry, the broadcast industry, the communication industry. So these were the three industry verticals that we were focused on. And then around the same time, about 5 years ago, we incubated our medical business. And over the last 5 years, it took 2 to 3 years to really establish it. And ever since the last couple of years, we have seen tremendous growth in that. We have almost doubling our revenues in that medical segment. So we see now clear 3 market verticals as opposed to a lot of technology areas 10 years ago. And so we would remain focused in these 3 market verticals, and our focus is to really build world-class capabilities around these 3 areas.
Okay. How's the confluence of design and technology playing out in transportation?
Yeah, if you look at transportation, you have an automotive industry, of course, and as what sells in automotive companies is the overall design, right? Mm-hmm. Design is very important. So yes, there is a lot of design-led, product development that is happening in the transportation industry, not just in the automotive side, but in other areas also, right? Whether you talk of aerospace, rail, and so on. Design-led development is the way forward.
Okay. Can you explain the use of artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, AI and IoT, in the context of transportation? What's the effort that's put in? What's the impact at it?
Yeah. So if you look at IoT per se, connected car is going to be the future, right? Especially with electric cars and autonomous car coming in, you need to be at all times, connected to the infrastructure outside. A lot of things can be pushed through this connection. For example, if you have eventually what's going to happen is you will have smart pods, you will have the last mile connectivity or last mile delivery happening by autonomous vehicles. So how do you know that that a particular pod has delivered, so it has to be connected. IoT comes in. For example, if the battery runs out, how do you know? Suppose you have 100,000 pods all over the place. How will you be able to manage that remotely? Because there's no driver, it's autonomous, right? So you need to have that connectivity framework. IoT plays a very important role in really understanding, figuring out many of these complexities, right? The AI is appearing, across multiple areas. Especially if you look at diagnostics, if you look at the amount of data that every car is going to generate, there's going to be a lot of data, and you need very good algorithms to be able to crunch this data and make meaningful information out of this data, right? So AI will definitely be a key component there, more diagnostics and so on.
Are you seeing competition from younger startups in the last 5 years?
Not really, because startups are more into the product game, right? And we are a services organization. So we really don't see competition from startups, but we see collaboration from startups. So there is this company called AI, based out of the US. They are working in sensors for autonomous driving. We have partnered with this company to be able to integrate their sensors into our autonomous driving framework, so that they can demonstrate to their end customers a full end-to-end autonomous driving, how their particular sensor works in an autonomous driving framework.
Many thanks for sharing your insights on how technology is shaping design engineering. That was Manoj Raghavan, CEO and Managing Director of Tata Elxsi, telling us about the confluence of technology and design. It brings us to the end of this episode of the Forbes India One CEO Club in partnership with Google Cloud. Until next time, goodbye.
Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.